Hey guys, there's a lot of hype around the new Week 1 mod, and honestly there should be, because it's awesome. But it's only on build 42, so you need to be on that in order to play it. But if you're waiting for the full release of build 42, you can still get a taste with the Day 1 mod, which is on both builds 41 and 42. Either way, these mods let you experience the outbreak of the apocalypse as it unfolds, which dramatically changes the experience of Project Zomboid
forever.
But before we get into the guide, we need to talk about settings first. Now, there are quite a few settings you can customize, but we'll cut it down to the more significant ones, starting with those that improve performance, because there's a lot of NPCs and scripted events that might bog down your machine. I know it did for me. Now, I found the experience so awesome that I didn't care, but for future runs I wouldn't mind things being more smooth. One of the things that Slayer, the mod author, recommends is to turn down the NPC counts like so, and the NPC vehicles like so. This should help with performance a little bit. And another thing you might do is increase your RAM allotment, which I'd recommend if you have 16 gigs or higher, and I'll put a link in the description with a quick and easy tutorial for doing so. But moving on to other settings, you can customize the various bandits clans, their spawn rates, spawn dates, numbers, whether they have guns or not, whether they're friendly or not, turn them off entirely, and so on. This is mostly for life after the events of Week 1, and we'll skip those for now, and head to the bandits general settings instead, where you might want to turn down weapon aiming ticks and bandit global weapon accuracy, because on these default settings, you can expect to take quite a few bullets. Now, a big part of the Week 1 experience is that you'll probably have a tactical nuclear warhead dropped on your location, if you're trying to survive in town, that is. But if that isn't for you, you can turn that off by unchecking the final solution box. Also, depending on your political persuasion, you might be interested in tampering with the inflation rates and the buying power of money. If you're more of a Bidenomics fan, you might leave the options as they are, or decide to make inflation worse by upping the inflation rate and lowering the buying power. Or if you don't like Project Zomboid to be too realistic, you can always lower the inflation rate and increase the buying power to your own liking. That being said, money isn't really a big deal, and after a couple days becomes less relevant. But let's get into the gameplay of Week 1 and we'll talk about it some more. Now, when you first spawn in, you'll spawn in with an NPC companion called a babe, which is actually a setting you can turn off too, though I'm not sure why you would. Your babe usually gets lost or dies, and until then they follow you around and assist you in your adventures, defending you against your enemies, and happens to be totally down to get violent if you decide you can't wait a week before starting to burglarize people's homes. Now, just because it happens to be a week before the actual apocalypse and things are relatively hunky-dory, you still need to get busy accomplishing your usual Zomboid apocalypse priorities. Like any other Day 1 in Project Zomboid, you need food and you need water. Only now you can't just barge into your neighbor's house and take it. At least without expecting some armed resistance and maybe the cops to show up and pop a cap in your ass. But what you can do is head to your local grocery store and pay for those items. And on your way there, I would recommend embracing the tenets of freeganism and looking in any trash cans and dumpsters that you pass for any leftover food or water containers or weapons that might be in there. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. When you first spawn in, since this is build 42, one of the first things you probably want to do is to take a curtain off your window seal and turn it into a bag. Thanks, build 42. And also, depending on your profession, you'll spawn in with certain weapons and relevant tools, which you'll either want to equip, drop, or keep for later in order to earn money. For me, I always play firefighters, so I come with a fire axe and a fire extinguisher, which I could use later on to put out fires and earn money. And later into the week, you might actually see some other NPCs doing this, as well as other NPCs doing other professions. It's pretty cool. Now, I don't usually participate in this myself because I have other priorities in the build-up to total and imminent societal collapse, but maybe you'll want to roleplay as someone who ignores the ongoing catastrophe and just keeps swimming, so to speak, by going to work every day while everything around you goes to hell in a handbasket. To each his own. It is your own customizable apocalypse after all. But getting back to your first day, there's plenty of events and commotion to get immersed into. And honestly, you'll have plenty of time to experience these events, as you're probably going to die a lot and have the chance to see them all over again. But if you want to survive, you might turn your attentions to finding shelter and to hoarding supplies. Now the Centers for Disease Control is going to drop leaflets on the ground and recommend you get somewhere underground because they're going to drop a nuke in 7 days when they lose control of the situation. Now, I've found that you can actually survive above ground when they drop the nuke, but not without taking injuries. So if you want to avoid those injuries, you'll need at least a basement somewhere to sit out the bombing. But we'll get more into that later. Now, when it comes to hoarding loot and loot priorities, things are a little different with the Week 1 mod.
Hey, this is my turf, buddy.
You can't just go into your neighbors' homes and take it. But you can go into stores and buy things. Only your money's gonna run out sooner or later, and to be honest, the stores are gonna get ransacked and the shelves will be empty soon enough, because everyone else is thinking the same thing as you are. Now, I'll say here that things more or less unfold in a logical sequence of events and kind of work the way you think that they would. So, when in doubt, just assume that things might work how you think it would if it was happening in real life. Now, if you break into someone's home, they might attack you. If you take food from the grocery store without money to pay for it, police might show up and they might attack you, and so on and so on. But getting back to food, your main source of food and loot in general will actually be dead bandits. I also recommend looting any dead people you come across for your first watch and any spare change that they may have on them. Now, some NPCs, particularly the robber bandits, might even have stacks of cash on them, so keep an eye out for that if you're into, say, money and paying for things. But later on, as banditry becomes more prevalent, you'll absolutely want to loot these guys for all the canned food, water, and medical supplies you can get your hands on, not to mention armor and weapons. And speaking of medical supplies, these should be right up at the top of your loot priority list. In particular, tweezers and suture noodles, because again, in every playthrough of the Week 1 mod, I've definitely been required to remove quite a few bullets from my body. This also means you'll need plenty of alcohol and bandages, so you might want to pay a visit to your local clinic and rob it if you have to, and or loot any bandits you can for theirs. But again, dead bandits are going to be your most important and sort of the most easily accessible source of loot, as they'll have plenty of good things on them and probably get killed by the authorities, leaving their juicy loot primed and ready for your thirsty hands.
Oh shit, they're here!
And I'll add here, you should probably consider wearing more bulletproof armor than you might otherwise wear in Project Zomboid, which again, you'll find aplenty on the bandits. But let's move on, because Week 1 is not all bandits all the time. You will also encounter friendly survivors throughout, who you can actually order around and use as allies to stand watch and guard over you. You can give them specific watch posts by pressing G and designating a square for them to stand in until they inevitably get killed. I know there is more interactions available with the NPCs, but I haven't figured most of them out yet. You can even talk to them, but I haven't gotten much beyond greetings yet.
No one's inside the place.
And I don't think the mod author has gotten too deep into those either. Anyways, as events unfold, your best bet for survival might be doing as the authorities recommend and staying inside. This makes it less likely that you'll catch a stray bullet, so you might want to do the Zomboid usual and park yourself next to a TV and read some books. But honestly, this won't help you too much when the shit really starts to hit the fan. And even if you don't go outside, eventually the outside will come to you. You can expect bandits to assault or rob your location sooner or later. But your friendly NPCs will be there to help, either as meat shields or defenders, and even the police and militia can be counted on to show up and put down the bad guys. But as always in Project Zomboid, you'll need to be careful. And with week 1, you'll need to be even more careful because human NPCs are actually much deadlier than zombies. So you might want to avoid going into the employee-only sections of public stores or breaking into cars or doing other crimes in full view of the general public. These things might very easily end up getting you killed. Now, if you do happen to get in trouble with some NPCs, I have found that it is possible to outrun their aggro, and I've also found that if you commit crimes without anyone seeing, it can be fine. But don't quote me on that. But no one seemed pissed off that I took out this graffiti artist. And things like taking books from the shelves in the library of the school will turn the NPCs against you. But if no NPCs are around, there's no one there to notice. Although sometimes the NPCs see through the floors and things like that. But then again, some NPCs are wimps and will only be afraid of you if they happen to see you committing a crime, and they might run away. And if you're doing something like breaking into a warehouse or a storage unit, you have a little bit of time before the police show up, but generally they will show up and you want to get out of Dodge. Now, killing bandits is fine, but taking aggressive actions towards civilians is likely to bring an angry mob or even the authorities down on you. Anyway, as you get a few days in, the situation continues to deteriorate, and you'll begin to hear more and more gunfire, alarms, and even explosions. But as the situation continues to devolve, things actually get better for you. Better loot starts to become available as the bandits move in and either get killed by you, the police, or the militia. But you'll want to stockpile as much of their supplies as you can in order to survive the fallout from the impending nuke, which will leave the areas above ground inhospitable for apparently a few months. Now, I've been hearing different things about it, and everything is sort of uncertain anyways, as the mod will continue to evolve as it gets updated, but the mod author Slayer says it's supposed to last 90 days. I'm not sure if he'll keep it that way or decide it's too long, because honestly it sounds kind of long. But now let's talk about some absolute must-haves when it comes to loot. We've already mentioned food and medical supplies, but you're definitely going to want to get coffee and maybe sleeping pills, because the chaos of the apocalypse will quite possibly make it impossible to sleep, and you'll be running around with maximum tiredness holding you back. Eventually, NPCs will spawn with coffee that you can loot off them, and you'll want to snag a mug, which they might have on them too, and keep an espresso machine on hand, which now works in Build 42 and is also necessary to brew that coffee. Alternatively, you can eat the coffee, but at the expense of your own happiness. But also you're going to want to snag gas masks and filters for that nuclear fallout, which takes over after the nukes have dropped. And you'll want a CDC hazmat suit if you can get your hands on one. Now, you can go outside in the fallout without a mask and without a CDC hazmat suit, but it makes you extremely drunk and sick, so it isn't ideal. And I don't know yet if it will kill you long term, because I haven't made it long term, but I would expect that it does. I just don't know if Slayer has a mechanism to make this happen at the moment. And because this mod is still a work in progress, not all of these settings and functions are totally set in stone. But as I said earlier, Slayer has said that the fallout is supposed to last for 90 days, and you're expected to live in your basement waiting that out. So the ideal situation is that you acquire enough supplies to stay underground without having to come up for air for a full 90 days. And if you don't acquire enough supplies, then you would wear a hazmat suit to go topside and do your looting. The problem with that is, what if you never happen to obtain a hazmat suit? The solution to that is another problem, because CDC cleanup guys will show up to wipe out any survivors, meaning you. And this happened to me, it was quite a shock. But if you can kill the CDC cleanup guys who come to kill you, you'll have that hazmat suit you need to go outside. So here's the rule of thumb for your first week with the week 1 mod. Find food, shelter, and supplies sufficient enough to last 90 days of nuclear fallout, and be able to defend against the ruthless CDC guys who come to kill you. That's basically it. Now, I've also read that not everywhere on the map has nuclear fallout, so maybe if you can get out of town afterwards, or try to sit out the apocalypse in a cabin in the woods or something, maybe you won't get nuked or have to deal with the fallout. But regarding this whole survive after the nuke thing, you're probably going to need guns and bulletproof armors for the CDC guys, and maybe a way to cheese them. Because they're pretty brutal. When I figure this out, maybe I'll make a follow-up video. And without getting too much more into spoiler territory, I'll just say there's so much more to this mod, many secrets and nuances. Like the fact that your character tries to tell you something through his dreams. I believe he's telling you how to stop the government from dropping the nukes, but you'll have to find the secret military location he's referencing in order to do so. And that in under 7 days before it's too late, which is quite the tall order. But anyways, we've really only scratched the surface of the mod here, and it's something I think everyone needs to experience for themselves without having everything about it revealed in a guide. So go out there and get it for yourself already. Seriously, it's awesome. I know that it made me want to play Zomboid all day and all night long, which might not be such a good thing, but thankfully I don't really have the time for that anyway. Suffice it to say though, this mod is taking Project Zomboid to the next level. But that'll do it for the video. I'll invite you here to leave your thoughts and experiences with the mod in the comments, and any tips you can share for surviving week 1, because it's brutal and we need all the help we can get. Alright, I'm out. Peace.